the silent spectacle, the birth of film, the era that started it all. But filmmakers were experimenting with cameras and trying to build the perfect camera to capture life and capture stories to show the world. And one of the first kind of directors to do that, to actually make a film using a motion picture camera, was Louis Le Prince, who made Round a Garden Scene in 1888, I think it was. And this film was only a couple of frames long, but it was one of the first films to actually have some kind of time and space continuing edit sequence that actually simulated a kind of real life situation. And so yeah, this is the film. If you see, so yeah, this film kind of started it all, I guess, and this is where the birth of film came, and how continuity of editing came as well, when more shots were being added together to create some kind of time, an atmosphere of time like we have in our own real lives. So yeah, this was one of the films to kind of birth film into getting its wheels running. And eventually the narrative form started coming along. And a lot of people were playing around with doing more than one shot and adding them together and creating some kind of idea of time and space. And also adapting stories. Well, the first kind of film to use the narrative structure in a way, one of the first films, was A Trip to the Moon by Georges Méliès in 1902. And this film was a science fiction film, not very long, only 15 minutes, but it kind of, you see, when you watch it, you see the idea of what they were trying to do with the narrative form. They were trying to create time and space, a reality that kind of seemed real and that was happening, but it was set in a film world. It wasn't in our own world, but as we probably in that time, as they watched it, it simulated a real life situation, and people believed it, and actually kind of maybe some people actually believed that they did actually go to the moon, when in fact that didn't happen until the 60s. But the point is that these films tried to create a realism from the very beginning, and this film tried to do that very well. Another filmmaker that tried to use stories and the narrative structure again, but in a more political and, I guess, moral way, is D.W. Griffith, and Birth of a Nation was one of his controversial films of the time, about mainly slavery and the Civil War begin against North and South America, and with lots of racist kind of issues bringing up, is one of them films that gained a lot of controversial but also a lot of success because of what he did, what he played with in terms of the story and what he used in terms of history, and the fact that the ending of the film kind of glorifies what KKK's kind of original ideas were trying to employ for the traditions of the Southern people, and the way he used, the way he was able to tell that story in a silent way was kind of impressive. And as you can see in some of the footage, that a lot of expressions were used, and it's all about showing the audience, the front of people, what they're really feeling. And that's one of the great things about silent film, is it had the ability to really show expressions. Actions speak louder than words in this case. So yeah, he was able to produce films of big quality, long quality, but also be able to still hold the viewer in that mode of spectatorship, and able to make an impact on them. But also not just by using a story, but by using real life historical events to make an impact, maybe in a political way, maybe not, maybe just in a moral way of his own values of life and what it meant to him. One person, one iconic director and film actor and producer and even composer was Charlie Chaplin. Now this gentleman was English, but a lot of his films were made in America, and what he tried to do, what he was doing with film, he was using the emotion, using the actions, and well, obviously they couldn't speak in that time, but he was very good at portraying actions, and he'd done it in a way that he never really treated the camera as an invisible object. He used it as an audience in a sense. So basically, whenever he was acting, he was looking to the camera quite a lot. And I think this kind of gave it a more theatrical approach rather than a cinematic approach. He was putting on a show rather than telling a story. But he still had narrative structure. He still had a story in there. For example, The Kid, which is a great film. One of my favourites of Charlie Chaplin. It's such a small story, such a simplified idea. But the way he's projected this story gives the simple things in life a bigger light than the big ideas in life. It shows the simplified, meanings of life that we humans have and want. And that's, looking after each other, love and all that kind of stuff. And in this film, he kind of portrays that through the fact he, ends up looking after this kid, and he brings up, even though he's homeless, he tries his best. And through comedic actions as well as sad actions, it gives the audience a bigger impact emotionally, and I think using them techniques implants the idea and the morals behind this film into the mind more. It makes the spectator remember and see, open their eyes to what he was trying to explore or project and explain, and even. Charlie Chaplin's film The Kid was a great film of its time, and also he was a great filmmaker. He was one of the most iconic silent filmmakers because of his ability to exploit and even pursue all aspects of the silent era and its ability in the cinematic world. One of the main films of the silent era was Phantom of the Opera. The reason this being is because it gave me a distinct historical impact on the future of film, and this relates to horror, and how that this film, the main actor, protagonist of Phantom of the Opera, Lon Chaney, was the first kind of person to produce his own makeup and special effects to create that horror monster effect. And he surprised the world, and he surprised the filmmakers of Hollywood and premiers by unveiling that this was all fake, but it seemed real. And no one knew that he had put makeup on. Everyone just thought he was the monstrous thing that he was. And this kind of spawned the era of horror that is today. And that special effects and makeup can seem quite real in the cinematic world. And I think what Rupert Julian was trying to do here, obviously this is a remake of the original, but he was trying to use the advancement of technology in the silent era to explore that story once more. Because the story has quite a strong meaning to it and strong values about, love and obsession, and traumatic experiences in your life can actually affect your personality and your actions towards others and cause problems or even cause happiness. But also, I think one of the main things they were trying to explore with this was the fact that this character was a monster. He had deformity, and they wanted to show that in the cinematic world. And I think they were able to make it look real because of the cinematic devices used. And it's great as well because this film is not only based around the story of the Phantom, but it's also based around a lot of music. It's about opera, it's about the emotion of singing, about how you feel emotionally. And in that, obviously, that period of time that there was no talking, it was all music. This film had a lot to explore because it was about music, but also about love. And it was a perfect time, a perfect moment for film to explore in terms of music, but with the cinematic devices to create it. Another film that created a lot of controversial but also a distinct style within the silent era was Sergei Einstein's 1925 film Battleship Potemkin. And what this film did, used a fairly typical kind of situation in a war, but on the Navy. But the cinematic devices and techniques that Sergei used kind of made it seem propaganda. He was trying to exploit how some people are treated unfair, how war causes mass hysteria, and how just giving everyone equal rights, giving an equal share of love and stuff can make things a lot better. And I think he was trying to explore of a time of war, just after war, decade after, maybe even 5 years, of how what he really thought that war did to him, his people, maybe to him, I'm not sure, but how that he wanted the world to see how some humans were just treated unfairly, and even though they worked hard and for their superiors in the war and protect their country, they never got any gratitude for it. They never got an equal prize or an equal gift for it, you know? And so yeah, using these editing techniques of what critics classed it as montage, the birth of montage, it used in a way the impact of image but of a different sound to relate, to bring out an idea of bring out a metaphor of what that could mean, what it's trying to say. For instance, you know, when the army are walking down the steps and you've got the sound going of the drums, and you know you've got the guns on the ships, and it's all build up of editing to create an impact, create a suspense of what's going to happen, or there's going to be something exploding in the atmosphere, in space and time of the film world. And again, this is another technique that was just kind of developed that I guess created an impact on the spectator. And this is what it was all about. It was all about creating an impact on the spectator. Because in the end, you can make a film, but you need a spectator to view it, or otherwise it's, you know, films are made to be watched and listened, but mainly watched. They're about showing rather than telling. And this was one of the key factors in Silent, because it never told. It was about showing a story rather than telling it. And yeah, so the editing techniques made this film more impactful, because the way it was edited was the way you saw it and the way you felt it. So yeah, Battleship Potemkin was one of them films that brought about a cinematic technique and method that still survives today in the film world. The last film I'd like to talk about is a film called Un Chien Andalou by Luis Buñuel. He worked on this film with Salvador Dali, a famous Spanish artist at the time, surrealist. And what Luis Buñuel was trying to do, I think, was explore the narrative form that had been developed in that time, silent cinema, and try and bring out something new, but still trying to keep the original aspect of narrative form, because it was powerful. And what he did in this film, he explored a dream logic, the dream state of which we all have, where events happen that make sense, but they're not in an order of the continuous time and space that we live in our lives. They're kind of jumbled up and random, but also the events, they seem familiar, but they don't make sense. And in this film, it's kind of about, well, the story of this film is, it's kind of about this guy who is dreaming of this woman, but it's at the start it seems like the woman's having a dream, and in fact I feel that the man's having a dream. And the man's dreaming of love, and he's dreaming of, you know, self-denial and stuff, where he sees himself telling himself off, and how he's pulling pianos towards the woman with the horses on, and the weight. I think what they were trying to show there was the weight of how hard he was trying to get this woman, and metaphorically the pressure and weight it was putting on him was explored through images, cinematic images and objects. And that's the surrealism when it comes from Salvador Dali, I think. And again, what they were trying to do was trying to do something new with the narrative form that had been brought out. They were trying to explore that, and rather than just telling a story or showing a story, they were showing an essence of what it's like to be human, an essence of just images in life, what we see, just even if it's a second. Which, again, I think this kind of film birthed today experimental films. Maybe there was others that did it, but I think this is one of the most iconic. But also, you know, Salvador Dali's art kind of reflects in this film quite a lot in terms of bugs crawling out the hand, and the pulling of the pianos, and the different things like that, and how the hands turn into guns. It's very surreal, but the surrealism lies in the narrative continuous time structure as well, and how it is seen. You know, one minute he has hands that come up like guns, and suddenly they turn into guns. It's kind of clever for its time. So after viewing all these films and kind of analysing the period in film's history of the silent era, what have we learned from this? Well, we've learnt that obviously this is the birth of film, so it's coming into its own, and it's just getting started, and a lot of people didn't know what they were really getting into, I guess, and they just tried to do what they knew before of other arts and incorporate it into the film. I think personally that Charlie Chaplin, even though he's quite a commercial and well-known character in the silent era film, I do believe that his films did bring something to the silent era that was very different from any other filmmaker. I mean, there's various other filmmakers that I haven't obviously viewed in this episode, e.g. Fritz Lang, who's another well-known film director and maker of the period of time for bringing out Metropolis mainly. But to me, honestly, yeah, Charlie Chaplin was one of them guys that he developed a way of using the silent aspect of filmmaking. There was no dialogue to a full advantage by really using that in storytelling and just images on the screen, really. But also there's, at the beginning, there's all a relation to life and how people were trying to capture life or, again, stories, but they already started in the beginning with a realist approach, and eventually that will continue on, and it has continued on, as we can see in recent films and years films after the silent era. So, but really, what have you learnt? That's what I want to know. And if you do have any comments, if you want to recommend some films for me to review in terms of history and how you think it's contributed towards the history of film, post a comment and share this video, and hopefully you've learnt something from this, and I hope you've paid more of an interest in film of long ago and today as well. Thank you.